What's going on, family? This is Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. I want to take a look at Mike Gibbons. Featured here are the Gibbons brothers. They call them the famous Fighting St. Paul brothers. Mike Gibbons and Tommy Gibbons. Now, Tom Gibbons is to your left. He was the heavyweight. Had an opportunity to fight for the heavyweight championship belt over the Manasseh Molar, Jack Dempsey. Fight took place in Shelby, Montana. And it was recorded as one of the most boring 15-round championship heavyweight bouts in boxing history. Almost as bad as Mike Tyson, James Bone Crusher Smith. And I gotta tell you, Jack Dempsey requested $200,000 that town didn't have. And they liquidated the assets. And it was depending on Tom Gibbons winning that fight so they can get their money back. But he would disappoint him because Tommy Gibbons was really a light heavyweight, but he fought out of the heavyweight division. Didn't have the punching power or the finesse to deal with a Jack Dempsey. He had enough experience to hang in there for 15 rounds. In Shelby, Montana, would go bankrupt. Now, on the other hand, Mike Gibbons, to your right, he was the older brother of Tommy Gibbons. He had a son, had a very good record himself. And he would train a young man by the name of Jimmy Gibbons, also out of St. Paul. But Mike Gibbons was born July 20th, 1897, St. Paul, Minnesota. He died August 31st, 1956 in St. Paul, stood 5'9" weighed 145 to 162 and a quarter pounds. Excuse me. And Mike Gibbons was a welterweight as well as a middleweight. He was quick with his hands, fast on his feet. He was a solid boxer who could punch. Now, he was in the ring with Harry Greb 3 times, Al McCoy, Jeff Smith 4 times, Jimmy Clabberley 3 times, and Bob Moha, Eddie McCarthy twice, Leo Florian Hook twice, Packer McFarlane twice, and Jack Dillon, the Giant Slayer. Would also face Ted Kid Lewis. Ted Kid Lewis would be involved in a 20-bout series with Jack Britton. Would also be responsible for wearing the first mouthpiece. Matter of fact, he helped design it. That time they called it gum shoes or gum shield. Ted Kid Lewis is a very underrated welterweight. Mike O'Dowd fought him twice, both no decision matches. Mike O'Dowd was also out of St. Paul's. That would be a rivalry between Mike Gibbons and Mike O'Dowd. Mike Gibbons was entered in the World Boxing Hall of Fame in 1997, Minnesota Boxing Hall of Fame 2010, Ring Boxing Hall of Fame in 1958, International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1992. He had 133 professional fights, 66 wins, 3 losses, 4 draws, 2 no contests. He was involved in 47 wins, newspaper decisions, 6 losses, and 5 draws, newspaper decisions. He had 38 knockouts. And let's quickly go through some of those opponents that I just mentioned. Harry Greb, fought him 3 times. Harry Greb, I have number 2 ranked, greatest fighter of all times. He was in there with the who's who in all weight divisions. He was the first fighter and only fighter to defeat Gene Tunney. Took the America's Light Heavyweight Championship belt away from him. Mike Gibbons was in the ring with Al McCoy, who was a former middleweight champion who lost his title to Mike O'Dowd. Jeff Smith fought him 4 times. He was originally from Brooklyn, New York. He would reside in Manhattan, where he would train in Harlem's Grubbs Gym, located on 116th Street. He would train with Johnny Wilson, who was from Harlem, New York. But he would also spar with Kid Norfolk, color light heavyweight champion. Jeff Smith would eventually move to Bayonne, New Jersey. Quite a fighter was Jeff Smith. Jimmy Clappy, 3 times. Didn't have a quite masterful jab, but he could move. Circled around his opponent, bounced on his toes. He was pretty sharp when it came to the sweet science of boxing. Fought him 3 times. Bob Mohar wound up becoming a heavyweight. Eddie McCarthy fought him twice. Another good fighter. Fast stepper. Leo Florian Hook fought him twice. Packy McFarlane 2 times. Jack Dillon. They called him the Giant Slayer. He became the light heavyweight champion of the world. Ted Kid Lewis. As I stated, 20 bout series with Jack Pitton. George Chip. Mike Gibbons fought George Chip twice. George Chip would take the title away from Frank Klaus. Frank Klaus wanted no part of Mike Gibbons. Frank Mandel and Michael Dowles. Wow, what a fight series they would have. 2 no-decision fights. And Mike Gibbons would begin wrestling at the YMCA downtown St. Paul's. He met his instructor, George Barton. And after training just for a few weeks, Barton would turn him professional. And his first fight would be against Newsboy Brown. He would defeat him in 6 rounds. Now, boxing would be illegal in Minnesota. If you got caught, you would do 7 years in jail and possibly $1,000 fine if you were caught. Fights took place in the barns and saloons and boats, anywhere where you would not get caught. Because if you did, you would do time. And Gibbons fought 106 fights from 1910 to 1921. And what was amazing about Tommy Gibbons, he would claim middleweight championship of the world in 1910, when Stanley Ketchel would be killed by Walter Dipley. That belt would now be up in the air. Mike Gibbons would take claim of it. Now, Mike Gibbons was avoided. Frank Klaus and Sam Langford was avoided by Mike Gibbons. Sam Langford would even agree to come down in weight to meet up with Mike Gibbons. He was willing to face Tommy Gibbons. Both ignored him. Now, the big showdown was between both men, Mike Gibbons and Mike O'Dowd. 1915. Minnesota didn't license and legalize boxing. So the only way either man would win, they had to knock the other man out. Now, Mike O'Dowd as champion could have lost every round. But if Mike Gibbons didn't knock out Mike O'Dowd, Mike O'Dowd would still be champion. Because it would be considered a no decision. And that's just the way it was at that time, because it wasn't legalized. Mike Gibbons would defeat O'Dowd one more time. One of 3 times offered in 1922. If he didn't knock him out, he would not become champion. He was not able to, so he was never champion. But Mike Gibbons was some fighter. Very underrated. The Gibbons brothers. The opportunities these men had. Amazing. Tommy Gibbons would also be given a shot at Gene Tunney, the Fighting Marine. He gets slaughtered in about 4 rounds. Gene Tunney treated him like a sparring partner. Tom Gibbons would also get in the ring with the Pittsburgh Windmill, Harry Greb. You see, Tommy Gibbons and Mike Gibbons are very good fighters, but they were not A-level fighters. But Mike Gibbons, you could put in the A-level status because he was very fast with his feet, quick with his hands, and he could punch. As for Tommy Gibbons, didn't have the punching power for that heavyweight division, and that was his downfall. Let's take a look at some of the opponents of Mike Gibbons. Here you have Al McCoy, who's a middleweight champion of the world. He will lose his title to Mike O'Dowd. And Mike O'Dowd will lose his crown to Johnny Wilson, 1920. And as you know, Johnny Wilson will lose his crown in 1923 to Harry Greb. Here's Tommy Gibbons, Mike Gibbons' younger brother. These are all opponents of Mike Gibbons. Here you have Ted Kid Lewis. He would become welterweight champion of the world when he faced Jack Britton. But he would take the title Here you have Harry Greb in New York. Originally from Pittsburgh. Lived in New York a short time. Frank Klaus. Frank Klaus would lose his belt to George Chip. Here you have Jeff Smith out of Bayonne, New Jersey, originally from New York. Very powerful puncher was Jeff Smith. Here you have Jimmy Clabley. Eddie McCarthy. And Mike O'Dowd. He was the rival of Mike Gibbons. Jack Dillon, the Giant Slayer, or Giant Killer, whichever you prefer. Al McCoy, Brooklyn, New York. These are just a few opponents of Mike Gibbons. George Chip become middleweight champion when he defeats Frank Klaus. Mike Gibbons, the Philly Phantom. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Salute to my subscribers. Salute to Mike Gibbons. Philly Phantom. He's actually the St. Paul Phantom. I'm thinking of Tommy Gibbons. I'm thinking of Tommy Loughran. St. Paul Phantom is Mike Gibbons. The Philly Phantom is Tommy Loughran. So salute to St. Paul Phantom. They called him the Wizard. All right, peace.